With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown.
And I am Yolana Weeks.
Our top stories: St. Kitts and Nevis eyes acceleration of green energy future after Taiwan visit.
Parents of autistic children discuss real-life experiences during World Autism Day meeting.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister addresses potential impact of resurgent Trump trade policies.
Charlestown Primary School 6 feet at the Bunny and Gulf Insurance Nevis Inter-Primary School Championship.
UK ETA fee increase announced, Nevis Premier advises citizens. Guyana goods to face increased U.S. tariffs. St. Lucia's investment minister vows to defend St. Lucia's CIP from a raft of Chastenay's challenges. Internationally, the European Union readies retaliation as U.S. tariffs threaten Germany's auto exports and economy. Now, the details. St. Kitts and Nevis is setting ambitious goals for a green energy transition, aiming to produce 50% of their electricity from renewable sources by 2030 and 100% by 2035. Jonathan Kelly, Skellex Project and a renewable energy manager in the Energy Transition Unit, highlighted the importance of this shift.
The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, the government and the people, were on a pathway for attaining a sustainable island state. And part of one of the pillars, as already mentioned this morning, is the green energy transition. And this has to be understood not just from the standpoint of emission reductions, but also from the standpoint of energy security, decoupling ourselves from the over-dependency on imported energy in the form of fossil fuels.
Currently, the Federation relies heavily on diesel fuel for electricity generation, with
approximately 98% of the electricity being generated in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis is from the form of utilizing diesel fuel that is converted in these generators to provide electricity.
A recent trip to Taiwan provided valuable insights into building resilient energy systems. Kelly explained that the delegation interacted with experts in Taiwan's energy sector, observing
how they're able to build resilient systems, how they're able to have systems that are able to allow for the integration of distributed and centralized solar and battery energy systems. We're able to visit some of those technology providers and we're able to have that exposure.
He further noted a comment from a St. Kitts and Nevis student studying in Taiwan.
We have noted that during typhoons, the power stays on in Taiwan. And they are aware that when we're here back in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, sometimes it's just a tropical storm and we have island-wide outage.
This observation underscores the need for strategies to build very resilient grids in St. Kitts and Nevis. The discussion with the Taiwan Power Company focused on these strategies, and they aim to establish memoranda of understanding to progress the electricity and energy sector in St. Kitts and Nevis. The Right Honorable Dr. Denzel Douglas, Minister of Foreign Affairs et al., shared tangible outcomes expected from the Taiwan trip during a press conference on March 28, 2025.
We speak of the need to have cheaper electricity. One of the immediate things that will happen is at least 2 investors have indicated their interest in providing solar energy panels constructed here using the technology that we witnessed ourselves when we visited the appropriate factory in Taiwan.
This initiative aims to bring renewable energy directly to residential homes.
We have therefore looked at this as immediately returning to bringing renewable energy in the form of solar energy on the rooftops of residential homes, so that we would be able to, with the support of Skellex, have domestic production of solar energy.
Furthermore, excess energy generated domestically could be fed back into the national grid. To ensure grid stability with the integration of renewable energy, investment in smart grid technology is crucial.
The importance of artificial intelligence, ensuring that there's a smart system that will now operate within Skellex, so that any feedback to the national grid of Skellex will not destabilize the entire system.
He also highlighted the need for a grid that can withstand threats from natural disasters.
When the hurricanes would pass, etc., there is need to stabilize the grid. And so there is going to be investment in ensuring that the national grid is a smart national grid so that it can detect the threats to its instability and shut down accordingly, as would be directed from the intelligence gathered from the appropriate machines.
The pursuit of a sustainable island state also involves investing in human capital.
The increasing in the number of scholarships we demanded and received on the spot. An increased number of scholarships in certain specific areas that the government believe is absolutely necessary for us to churn out new trained minds in those areas that we have identified to be critical to assist us to attain the sustainable island state that we speak of.
These scholarships will focus on critical areas necessary for achieving sustainable development in St. Kitts and Nevis.
The Cotton Farmers Comprehensive School organized a meeting for parents raising autistic children on April 2, 2025, World Autism Day. The meeting allowed parents to discuss their unique stories, provide insights on the challenges faced, the strategies used to calm their child, and coping mechanisms for themselves as parents. The parents discussed the complexities of dealing with behavior, from throwing of tantrums to hyperactivity. Parents were encouraged to try different methods to calm their children, whether breathing, counting, saying ABCs, or doing anything that the child likes to do. Some autistic children have significant speech challenges, but the parents were reminded to utilize the St. Kitts Spectrum Center to assist, while they too try to practice speech at home with their children. One of the main concerns raised by the parents, however, was preparing their children for the future, including employment, conducting business, relationships, and the worst-case scenario, parents' death. An educator, Mrs. Charmaine Blanchett, acknowledged that going through life with a child on the autism spectrum isn't easy, but shed light on the importance of acceptance and patience. She also admonished the parents to focus on the social skills of their children so that they can develop the necessary independence to integrate into society. Blanchett encouraged the parents not to keep their autistic child sheltered, but to allow them to help out with chores in the home and also go into the public space like the supermarket, church, and the movie theater, giving them an as normal an upbringing as possible. Though autistic advocates have made significant progress in bringing the experiences of autistic individuals to the forefront of global discussions, the parents crave inclusivity, quality education, workplace accessibility, and an autism-friendly society for their children.
Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew addressed the nation on April 2nd, 2025 via the roundtable broadcast, tackling concerns surrounding the resurgence of Trump's trade policies and their potential ramifications for St. Kitts and Nevis. The Prime Minister acknowledged the widespread unease caused by the looming threat of tariffs on imports from major trading partners like Canada, Mexico, and China.
What you're saying is absolutely correct. If these tariffs hit, there's hardly any country in the world that can escape. Not even the large economies can really escape. Not China, not Canada, not Mexico.
Dr. Drew emphasized the government's proactive approach, highlighting ongoing dialogue with the U.S. to secure a carve-out for St. Kitts and Nevis.
So our argument with the U.S. is that we want a carve-out, because with us you have a significant surplus of $54 billion.
Drawing on factual data, he contrasted the nation's trade deficit of over $750 million with the U.S. against the surpluses of other countries targeted by the tariffs. The Federation and other territories have been hit with a 10% tariff. He explained that the U.S. argument was that
these countries have surpluses with us and it's unfair to us, fair enough. What about the countries like us that have deficits with you?
He hoped this appeal resonated, noting that the Secretary of State pledged to relay the concern to Washington.
I think that question was received, and I think when the Secretary of State was in the Caribbean, he said he will take that back to Washington.
Beyond governmental advocacy, the Prime Minister stressed the importance of public awareness and collective action.
The second aspect to it is to educate our people. All people need to know. This is not government dependent, as some people want to make it out to be. This is beyond government.
He cautioned that tariffs could impact prices, potentially requiring adjustments in consumption patterns.
We might be called upon to change what we consume, what type of services we access.
Adding that consumers may need to consider alternative, more affordable goods from different regions. In line with this call for self-reliance, Dr. Drew outlined plans to bolster domestic food production to
farm 100 acres immediately. And before the year done, we want to have about 300 acres under production of food for our people.
This initiative would transition workers into agriculture, increasing productivity and food security.
Each 10 acres going to take 30 people, 100 acres going to take about 300 people. 200 acres going to take 600 people, 300 acres going to take 900 people. That's producing jobs for 900 people, producing food for our people.
Recognizing the need to diversify trade routes and attract investment, the Prime Minister highlighted efforts to explore new partnerships and sectors.
Open up new trade routes, such as to Nigeria, for example, or the African continent, seeking to open trade routes in northern Brazil.
He also mentioned ongoing discussions with
a company called Evergreen, sponsored by the Afrexim Bank, to invest, discussions going on with respect to investments into aquaculture or fish, and then discussions into chicken production as well.
He noted the strides made in local egg production supported by a domestic hatchery and plans for a slaughterhouse and animal production in Bayfoods, developed in collaboration with Southern University. The partnership with Southern University, a historically black university from Louisiana, was further emphasized.
We signed an MOU with them. Not only that Southern University is helping us with our animal production, along with Ross University. And the cannabis industry is expected to create a whole new industry.
These collaborations, combined with tourism enhancements, including the development of Ritz-Carlton and infrastructure developments, form part of a multifaceted strategy to fortify the economy against external shocks. The Prime Minister hoped that
the new reality in the world doesn't affect the investment, because it's a new reality.
Dr. Drew reaffirmed the commitment to energy security, mentioning the geothermal project on Nevis.
We reach a point that has never ever been reached in our history with respect to geothermal. And we are going to open up the bids document in May. The Green Climate Fund was here. And the head of the Green Climate Fund said, I know you all want to do 5 wells, but we want you all to do the full 9 wells. And get rid and have full energy for St. Kitts and Nevis. Do you know what that will do for us? And we're going to open up the bidding document in May. I know that there are going to be challenges. But I think as the leader and the party in power and with a team, we need to start to put things in place so that there could be hope. There's a lot of hope. And we are not going to sit back and watch, whatever is happening and countries making their decisions or complain about their decisions. I'm not going to sit here and complain about the decisions that the President of the United States makes now. He says he's making them in the interest of his country. How can I be vexed with that?
He noted that the Green Climate Fund was pushing St. Kitts and Nevis to expand geothermal production to provide full energy for St. Kitts and Nevis. The Prime Minister concluded by reiterating the need for self-reliance and unity, invoking the words of Marcus Garvey.
So what are we going to do for ourselves? That is the question that is being asked. We have to do for self. That's what Marcus Garvey said. When he came here in the 1930s, he said, do for self and connect to Africa.
He challenged the nation to embrace this philosophy.
It's almost as if he knew the time would come when we will be left in a deep ocean to swim. And if we don't reconnect with our people, we'll have no.
He urged citizens, economists, and experts to engage in independent analysis and open dialogue, emphasizing that enlightenment is important. Dr. Drew called on all people, not just the government.
Because without the ideas, without the enlightenment, our people can be lost.
Dr. Drew argued that St. Kitts and Nevis can only navigate the challenges ahead and secure a prosperous future for all through collective understanding and action.
On April 2, 2025, thousands of spectators online and in person witnessed the young athletes of Nevis in one of the most exciting and competitive interprimary track and field championships in history. The top 4 schools, the St. Thomas's Primary, Joycelyn Library Primary, Ivor Walters Primary, and the Charlestown Primary went back and forth, with the lead changing several times earlier in the day, keeping spectators on the edge of their seats. The tension was so high at the Nevis Athletic Stadium that it must have come down to the wire to determine a clear-cut winner. despite a fierce team performance by the Ivor Walters Primary. Defending champions Charlestown Primary walked away with the championship title, marking its 6th consecutive win. The Charlestown Primary School is the first school to achieve such a feat since the inception of the championship 3 decades ago. The final medal count standings show Charlestown Primary School Tigers with 16 golds, 15 silvers, and 16 bronze. Ivor Walters Primary School Mustangs, a close second place finisher, amassed 16 golds, 11 silvers, and 16 bronze. To capture third place, St. Thomas's Primary School Jaguars won 10 golds, 9 silvers, and 8 bronze. A much smaller school, St. James Primary Thunders, also put on a spectacular show as they came out to win. Registering a team of 18 athletes, the team managed to win 9 golds, 1 silver, and 2 bronze for a 4th place finish. The Elizabeth Pemberton Primary School Lions ended the day in 5th position. The school captured 6 golds, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. The Joyce Neil-Library Primary School Falcons, though very consistent in placing in the events, settled the day in 6th position, amassing 5 golds, 17 silvers, and 15 bronze. The Nevis Academy placed 7th with 1 gold, 5 silvers, and 6 bronze. Maud Cross Preparatory School followed behind in 8th position with 1 gold, 1 silver, and 3 bronze. In 9th position, Violet O. Jeffers Nichols Primary School won 4 silvers and 4 bronze. And the Montessori Academy placed 10th with no medals on the table.
On March 31st, 2025, the Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley, addressed citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis regarding upcoming changes to the United Kingdom's Electronic Travel Authorization ETA system. The Premier emphasized that this authorization is not a visa, clarifying that
the people of St. Kitts and Nevis can still travel to the United Kingdom without a visa.
Premier Brantley explained the nature of the ETA.
What this is, which is now being made applicable to all travelers entering the UK, they're doing it in phases, is that you are required to go online and to submit your information and to get this ETA, Electronic Travel Authorization.
He further advised that
once approved, it is valid for 2 years or until the expiration date of your passport, whichever comes sooner. Please note that the ETA is linked to the passport. So once you have a new passport, you must apply for a new ETA.
the key announcement centered around an increase in the ETA fee.
Now, the reason I'm mentioning this now is that the UK government has announced that the cost for the ETA will increase from £10 to £16 effective 9th April 2025. So if you're going to the UK, the 9th of April 2025 or thereafter, you have to apply for your ETA, and the cost will now be £16, not £10. So they've increased it significantly. That looks like 60% increase from £10 to £16.
The Premier outlined the necessary steps for the application.
Each traveller must apply for an ETA before visiting the United Kingdom, as the approval process takes about 3 working days, but it may be shorter or longer. Before you apply, you will need your passport, access to an email, and a credit card, debit card, Apple Pay or Google Pay to process the payment. You will also need to upload or take photos of the passport and the face of the person applying.
Brantley detailed the permitted activities for those traveling under the ETA.
Please note that the ETA can only be used for persons who are traveling to the UK for up to 6 months for tourism, visiting family and friends, business or short-term study. Traveling to the UK for up to 3 months under Creative Worker Visa concession. Traveling to the UK for a permitted paid engagement. Transiting through the UK, including if you're not going through UK border control.
A crucial point was made regarding transit passengers.
Now, that last one is very important because it is saying that if you're traveling, transiting through the UK, you still need to apply for the ETA. So, please note that if you're not staying in the UK, you're going on to Taiwan, you're going on to Germany, you're going on wherever, but you're traveling through the UK, they're saying you still have to apply for the ETA.
Brantley concluded by urging citizens to seek guidance from official sources.
So, I ask our people to pay attention to that, and you can go to the UK government website, www.gov.uk, and you will get some assistance there in terms of how to apply.
Premier of Nevis, the Honourable Mark Brantley. In regional news, Guyana goods to face increased U.S. tariffs, Guyana news source reports.
Guyana has found itself among the countries that will face an increase in tariffs to be charged on goods to be imported into the U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump announced his global reciprocal tariffs, and Guyana was listed as one of those countries that will see increased tariffs. According to the information released by the U.S. government, Guyana will now face a tariff rate of 38%, which appears to be a blanket rate to cover all goods imported into the U.S. from Guyana. A number of other Caribbean countries, including Barbados, Antigua, Trinidad and Tobago, Belize, Suriname, and Jamaica, are also facing reciprocal tariff rates. However, their goods being imported into the U.S. will face a much lower rate at 10% compared to 38% on goods from Guyana. News source reached out to a number of senior government officials, including Vice President Dara Jagdeo, who indicated that the matter was being examined. Meanwhile, former Finance Minister Winston Jordan told News Source that the new U.S. tariffs would be bad news for sugar and a number of other exports from Guyana, including agriculture products. He said he believes Guyana previously enjoyed protection on the special arrangements for the Caribbean, but that now appears to have changed. Mr. Jordan also said it remains to be seen whether oil would be affected. In announcing the new global tariffs, U.S. President Donald Trump said the U.S. subsidizes a lot of countries and keep them going and keep them in business. He said the U.S. is now putting America first. The U.S. president also said the U.S. has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike, for decades, and it's time for that to change.
We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back. We're going to come back very strongly.
Just last week, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited Guyana as part of the Caribbean tour. It's unclear whether the issue of the new tariffs was discussed during his meeting with President Irfaan Ali and government officials. Guyana and the U.S. have close trade relations, and since Guyana started oil production, hundreds of U.S. businesses have opened operations in Guyana.
St. Lucia's investment minister vows to defend St. Lucia's CIP from a raft of Chastenay's challenges. HDS St. Lucia has that story.
Investment Minister Dr. Ernest Hilaire's legal defense will counter opposition leader Alain Chastenay's legal challenge against St. Lucia's CIP enterprise option. At the pre-cabinet press briefing on Monday morning, Dr. Hilaire confirmed Chastenay's filed injunction will go before the courts for litigation on May 2nd, 2025.
And I think we can all agree that the leader of the opposition has persistently attacked the CIP regionally and internationally, and now through the courts, as I mentioned. Of course, he's taken an injunction to halt its operation, and again, with no regard for the impact on the people of St. Lucia. I must admit that his actions have caused concern among investors and promoters within the CIP industry. He did it calculatedly to hurt St. Lucia, and it has had an effect on us. But we're going to continue to fight it to ensure that we win.
Shaken investor confidence could threaten St. Lucia's CIP, a key revenue source for the SLP administration's development agenda. In response to growing scrutiny, the government is moving to strengthen CIP legislation, reinstating exclusivity to attract the highest caliber of clientele.
We also want to make a major announcement that in the coming period, we will also propose amendments to the Citizenship by Investment Act and the accompanying regulations. And these changes are aimed at restoring the CIP to the exclusive high-end program that was originally introduced in 2015, before the changes were made by the Alain Chastenay administration. So these amendments will reintroduce quotas on citizenship granted, net worth requirements, escrow account requirements, and all of the changes that were enacted under the previous administration to ensure that our program is more robust, and it is more rigid, and it is also an exclusive, highly attractive program.
Dr. Hilaire reaffirmed the CIP remains secure, highlighting the recently signed Memorandum of Agreement among Caribbean CIP nations and the planned establishment of a regional regulatory body. He emphasized St. Lucia is taking active steps to ensure compliance with the MOA's stipulations.
We have since resumed the real estate option because the price did not affect any existing agreements. And since then, we have approved the real estate project Isla Resorts at Rodney Bay at Mont Pimad as our real estate project existing right now. Of course, in reviewing, we realized that the MOA and the enterprise option and the agreements under the enterprise option are not consistent. So we have not resumed sales under the enterprise option, and the National Infrastructure Improvement Program and the BMAX LLC housing project have been formally suspended. And again, I did announce that. The agreements between the government and the respective developers have been terminated because they're not consistent with the MOA, and we are now undertaking negotiations to ensure that the new contracts are consistent with the MOA and structured properly.
According to the CIP minister, the audit firm engaged to review the program submitted a preliminary report with recommendations. A final report is expected soon and will be tabled in Parliament upon completion.
We now bring you these international reports.
The Kalavrita factory in southern Greece. Here, workers are helping make feta cheese, one of their country's best-known products, with growing popularity in the United States. But after President Trump imposed new tariffs, that could be in doubt.
The tariffs certainly add a cost to the product, and what share of what will go to the final consumer, where the roulette ball will land, remains to be seen.
That uncertainty has fueled negative reactions from industrialists and politicians across Europe. The Spanish Prime Minister condemned President Trump's decision and urged the EU to take suitable measures.
Europe must deploy a package of counter-tariffs and other measures for economic security and strategic autonomy, which the European Commission and the member states have been preparing for months and will come into effect in the coming days and weeks if negotiations fail.
Reaction in Berlin was equally strong.
I consider the US president's latest tariff decisions to be fundamentally wrong. This is an attack on a trade order that has created prosperity all over the world. A trade order that is essentially the result of American endeavors. The entire global economy will suffer from these ill-considered decisions.
But the German economy in particular. Automotive exports to the US alone account for tens of billions of dollars each year. Some estimates suggest the overall economy could shrink by close to 2% as a result of these tariffs.
The general consensus across this continent appears to be that President Trump has now fired the first shots of a trade war. What battles lie ahead between Europe and the United States over the economy, we'll find out over the next 4 years. Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera, Berlin.
Hamas has rejected the latest Israeli proposal for the release of hostages and a ceasefire. Instead, the group is reaffirming its commitment to an alternative put forward by Egypt and Qatar. That mediated plan proposes a 50-day ceasefire and a step-by-step process for exchanging Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. In the absence of any agreement, bombardment continues. Thick black smoke was seen billowing from the southern Gaza Strip along with the sound of muffled explosions. The Israelis say they are establishing a new security corridor which will divide Rafah from Khan Yunis and give Israel control of a second access in southern Gaza. Well, our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell is in Jerusalem for us.
We know that Israeli troops are operating inside Rafah now, and the Israeli government, the Israeli Prime Minister indeed, has talked about dissecting the strip to put pressure on Hamas to free the remaining hostages that it's holding. It's believed that 24 of them are still alive. What we've seen is more of this intense bombardment. both in the south of the Strip, also in Gaza City as well. And the latest figures that have come out for the past 24 hours from the Hamas-run Ministry of Health in Gaza talk about 100 people having been killed. We had a briefing with the Israeli military spokesperson, and he was saying that there will now be this investigation into that incident on the 23rd of March when Israeli fire killed these 15 emergency workers close to Rafah. Their vehicles came under fire one by one in the early hours of the morning. They say that they were responding to an emergency call of people that were wounded, that there was gunfire in that area. A Palestinian paramedic who appears to be the only survivor has spoken to the BBC and really disputed the Israeli account of what happened. When the Israeli military spokesperson was talking to us, he said that now this investigation has been passed on to the general staff, so outside of the chain of command. He said that people would be held accountable if necessary, but Israel's initial investigation said that these were vehicles that were advancing suspiciously towards Israeli troops with no lights, with no emergency signals, they say, and they say that 9 members of Hamas and Islamic Jihad were killed, although they've only given the name of one of the Hamas members who they say was involved in the deadly 7th of October attacks on Israel.
Layoffs announced by U.S. employers in March surged to their highest level since the pandemic, largely due to a purge in federal workers by Elon Musk's Doge. That's according to a report Thursday from global outplacement firm Challenger Gray and Christmas. Challenger said job cuts increased 60% to more than 275,000 last month, the highest level since May of 2020. It was also the third highest monthly total on record. More than half of the job cuts were in Washington, D.C. Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, has taken a chainsaw to the public workforce as part of an unprecedented campaign by President Donald Trump's administration to cut spending and downsize the government. The mass firings have not yet shown in official labor market data in a significant way, as unions have challenged the dismissals in court, with some judges ordering the reinstatement of thousands of workers. Outside of government, there were also large increases in planned layoffs in the technology and retail sectors. And in the wake of Trump's tariff announcement, Jeep maker Stellantis on Thursday said it would temporarily lay off 900 workers at 5 U.S. facilities. Hiring plans have also plunged. Challenger said this year's first quarter total was the lowest since 2012. Economists will be closely watching the government's non-farm payrolls report released Friday for how many jobs employers added in March.
Residents of the separatist enclave of white Afrikaners in South Africa want US President Donald Trump to help them become a state. A group of them was so opposed to majority black rule when apartheid ended some 3 decades ago, they carved out the enclave. Orania, population 3,000, is the only town in South Africa where all residents, including menial workers, are white. Last week, community leaders visited the United States, seeking recognition as an autonomous entity. Orania movement leader Just Strydom, surrounded by bronzes of past Afrikaner leaders, including from the era of racist white minority rule, had a message for those stateside.
If whomever is interested in helping create Orania's future, we think investment is a good opportunity. Our message to the American government was help us here, 3-word response. It was not to say help us here by giving us American tax dollars so that we can just, do whatever.
Trump offered in February to resettle white South African farmers and their families as refugees. Strydom said that wasn't the point.
We are glad that we are recognized as a people, but we don't want to be refugees in another man's land.
South African authorities acknowledge Orania as a town that can raise local taxes and deliver services. The 8,000-hectare settlement is riding an unprecedented wave of support from right-wing Americans for Afrikaner nationalists who lost power when apartheid ended in 1994 and Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first black president. 3 senior Iranian officials interviewed by Reuters were vague about the help they sought in the United States. They said they wanted investment to build houses to keep up with its 15% population growth, infrastructure and energy independence. Stridham declined to say whether his delegation had contact with the Trump administration. The US State Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Political analyst Nikki Falkoff believes Afrikaner groups want a return to apartheid.
I think for a long time Orania and people around that kind of politics have been relatively careful about how they portray themselves. And they have made a big effort to go, we're just living peaceably side by side with our neighbors of other colors. We choose to only be white people, but that's okay because this is our space and we will live in this way. And what's happened now, I think, has emboldened them slightly more to go, no, well, actually, we would like apartheid back.
Some US right-wingers have sought to align with Afrikaners in their opposition to diversity policies. South Africa's black empowerment laws have been ridiculed by Trump's South African-born advisor, Elon Musk. A third of all South Africans are out of work, most of them poor blacks.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were St. Kitts and Nevis eyes acceleration of green energy future after Taiwan visit.
Parents of autistic children discuss real-life experiences during World Autism Day meeting.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister addresses potential impact of resurgent Trump trade policies.
Charlestown Primary School 6 feet at the Bunny and Gulf Insurance Nevis Inter-Primary School Championship.
UK ETA fee increase announced, Nevis Premier advises citizens. Guyana goods to face increased U.S. tariffs. St. Lucia's investment minister vows to defend St. Lucia's CIP from a raft of Chastenay's challenges. Internationally, the European Union readies retaliation as U.S. tariffs threaten Germany's auto exports and economy. Thank you for listening.